The sinking of Marais. "And where," demanded Skeletor impatiently, "is He-Man now? I begin to wonder, Evil Lyn, whether that bauble you call a crystal ball wand is really of any use." Evil Lyn stared intently into the globe of crystal. For a while there was nothing to be seen but swirling white mist, but then it began to clear, and both the living skeleton and his ally the witch could see clearly. "He seems to be in a marsh or swamp somewhere," said Evil Lyn, still watching intently. "It's Marais," snapped Skeletor. "A really desolate place to the east of Eternal City, where there is nothing but foul-smelling mud and quicksand. There are a few people there, living in their city, on one of the two solid pieces of rock. So what is that smug creature He-Man doing up there?" "He seems to be going to the city," said Evil Lyn, "if you can call it that. It seems more like a collection of huts to me." "It is a collection of huts," said Skeletor. "But these Eternians are so proud and boastful they would not call one treeless forest and a collection of mud huts a city if they were on Eternian land. Bah! Such a stupid collection of beings, and He-Man is the worst. Without him, they would all settle down nicely to be my own personal slaves. I could use them to work the mines under Point Dread, if it were not for him." "How do the marsh people get from place to place?" asked Evil Lyn, staring hard at the crystal ball. She was unimpressed by Skeletor's outburst, having heard it all several times before. "Bridge," the skeleton said briefly. "I have heard that there is one long steel bridge from the huts of Marais to solid ground higher up above sea level. They will soon be using it for the last time, however, since their piece of rock is sinking into the mud fast, and they will have to move everything onto that higher ground." "Which will be why He-Man is going to them," pointed out Evil Lyn. She smiled cruelly. "Why not get rid of the people of Marais and He-Man at the same time?" Skeletor grinned at the thought, and his eyes gleamed. "How?" "Use Trapjaw," suggested Evil Lyn softly. She smiled maliciously. "He could bite his way through any metal, couldn't he?" "I'm very glad to see you, He-Man," said the Lord of Marais. "And of course, Man-at-Arms and Battle-Cat, welcome to my home." It was a tiny place, barely the size of the royal palace at Eternos, but very beautiful. The walls shone silver and green, while freshwater pearls glowed everywhere the eye fell. Fresh, dry rushes paved the floor and gave the place a clean, sweet smell, while mist hung all around like silvery lace. Beyond the walls of the town, He-Man could hear the sinister sucking and gurgling noises of the swamp. "It seems a great pity," said He-Man, "that you will so soon have to leave this beautiful place." The Lord of Marais nodded. "Yes, it is, but there is nothing else we can do. This piece of rock is sinking fast, and our scientists have calculated that these buildings will be under the surface of the swamp within a few days. That is why we asked you to come and help us, He-Man. With your aid, we might be able to keep our possessions." "But why did you make no plans before?" asked Man-at-Arms. "You must have known that the rock was sinking." The Lord of Marais smiled. "Yes, we did, but we did not know how quickly it was doing so. Our instruments were so old and unreliable. We would have preferred it if we could do it all ourselves, but you can see our numbers." "Man-at-Arms made nothing unfriendly by that remark," put in He-Man. "We will all be pleased to help as much as we can." "By all means," added Man-at-Arms. "You may be sure of that. I merely wish to know why this was left so late. Forgive my manner." "Now," said He-Man briskly, "what do you want us to do?" The Lord of Marais gestured in the direction of the city. "My people have all their possessions to move to New Marais as soon as possible, and we have no other transport than our own hands and 2 carts. There was no need, you see, to have any more than that, since our trade is very limited." "I see," said He-Man. He glanced around. "Can you have your people assemble their goods here as soon as possible? Make sure that they bring nothing that can be easily replaced. This is going to be a very swift job, and nothing unnecessary should be taken." It was growing dark when Battle-Cat returned across the bridge for the second cart full of Maraisian goods. Marsh flies glowed with their own little lights, helping the people see their way across the long span of the steel bridge, and lanterns swayed on poles above their heads. Below, the marsh gurgled and bubbled, and the rocky island of Old Marais sunk still lower. Mud lapped at the walls of the tiny houses. "It must be sinking even faster than we thought," said the Lord of Marais to He-Man. "Will we be in time?" He-Man nodded, but his eyes were grave. "I think so," he said, "although we might have to move more quickly than we had bargained for. Tell the householders to take out all their goods and bring them to the bridge using planks of wood or doors or whatever they can find as hurdles to put them on. Then they must drag their goods to the bridge, and each must tie their hurdle to the one in front, very securely indeed. Do you understand that?" The Lord of Marais nodded. "I think so. When all the hurdles carrying all the household goods are tied together, they will form a long train, all ready to be pulled over the bridge. Is that right? He-Man nodded. Yes. Then when they have tied all the hurdles together, each family must sit on its hurdle and wait for us to pull them across. The Lord gasped. For you to pull them across the bridge? But that's impossible. Why, you would have to be the strongest man in the universe, He-Man laughed. Don't worry, it will be done. So you think, He-Man, sneered Skeletor. He and Trapjaw had crept down to the edge of the marsh and were listening intently to He-Man's words. If you think for one moment that I will allow you to get across that bridge to the safety of the other side, you have another thing coming. Trapjaw, we must get across to what the so-called Lord of Marais calls his new home. Come. Swiftly the two evil creatures made their way over the marshes, speeded on by Skeletor's magic, while above them the people of the marshes prepared for their journey. Is everything prepared? Asked Man-at-Arms. The Lord of Marais nodded. I believe so, he replied. I have checked twice, and all my people seem to be ready, but what? I don't know. I have an instinctive feeling that all is not as it should be, but I cannot say why. I feel some aura of evil about it. Man-at-Arms looked steadily at him. Evil? He asked gravely. The Lord shrugged. I may be wrong, but... I will speak to He-Man, said Man-at-Arms. You may be sure that if there's any evil about, He-Man can deal with it. He glanced about him as he made his way to He-Man, but could see nothing unusual. However, he too now felt that sensation, and he had felt it before. He-Man, he said, I believe that Skeletor is about these parts. He-Man looked at him. Skeletor? I have been speaking to the Lord, said Man-at-Arms. He told me that he felt an evil presence here, and now that he has mentioned it, I too sense that demon is here somewhere. He-Man touched the hilt of his sword. He may be, he said slowly, but we have no time to fight him now. We must take these people and their possessions safely to the new island before we can deal with Skeletor. I would never forgive myself if they were to die simply because we devoted precious time to the likes of Skeletor. We must deal with him when and if he makes a move to harm these people. Man-at-Arms nodded. Very well. The Lord assures me that his people are ready, so we can take the strain now. Good. He-Man turned and addressed the people of Marais. If you are all prepared, Man-at-Arms and I shall take you across the bridge. Whatever happens, you must not panic, but must keep calm and trust us. All will be done. He turned again, and he and Man-at-Arms took the weight of the long train of hurdles. Battle Cat paced steadily in front of them, his flashing eyes scanning the darkness in front of him, ready for any sign of danger or mischief. The long train began to move, slowly at first, then picking up speed, and as the last hurdle slid gently onto the bridge, the old Marais gave a last sinister sucking noise and disappeared below the surface of the marsh. The bridge, rooted in rock thousands of fathoms below the mud, held firm, as the Maraisians travelled slowly to their new home. At the other end of the bridge, Skeletor and Trapjaw watched them eagerly. Just a moment longer, Skeletor muttered hoarsely, and then, when we are sure that they are in the centre of the bridge, you can go to work. You will have done me and Eternia a great service, Trapjaw. Trapjaw's eyes gleamed at the thought, and his hideous steel jaw opened and shut in preparation for the task ahead. On and on they came, He-Man smiling as he pulled, Man-at-Arms, slightly less strong, frowning slightly, until at last they were in the centre of the bridge. Now, whispered Skeletor to Trapjaw. The escapee from Prison Star scurried out onto the flat outcrop of rock where the bridge was held by 4 thick steel cables. He ran to the first, and his jaw caught the light from the torches as he began to gnaw his way through the steel. On the bridge, Battle Cat's sharp eyes caught sight of him, and he began to roar and growl ferociously. The people on the hurdles cried out in fright, but He-Man turned swiftly to quiet them. What are we going to do about him? Hissed Man-at-Arms. He-Man turned swiftly to Battle Cat. Come, he commanded. You and Man-at-Arms pull the people across the bridge. I have other things to do. Without waiting for an answer, He-Man turned on his heel and ran swiftly along the bridge towards Trapjaw, whose terrible steel mouth was just gnawing through the first of the cables. As he reached him, Skeletor sprang out from his hiding place. Not so fast, He-Man, he snarled. Where do you think you are taking these troublesome people? To another part of their stinking bog? He-Man faced him coldly. Out of my way, Skeletor, unless you wish to be thrown into the marsh yourself, you and the jailbird you have with you. Skeletor chuckled. You are mistaken, he said. It will not be my fortune to sink into the mud of Marais, but yours and all the dolts behind you. He-Man drew his sword. "By the goddess!" he cried. "I never imagined that such wickedness could exist in one being, even in you, Skeletor, but you will not kill these people. I will prevent you." Skeletor laughed, an evil, cruel sound. You? You are 1 against 2, and Trapjaw is doing his work well." He gestured toward the escapee, and He-Man saw that Trapjaw had bitten through the first cable and had turned his attention to the second, one of the pair holding the other side of the bridge. The people of Marais were screaming with fright, clinging to their hurdles, while the bridge itself swayed ominously. Man-at-Arms and Battle-Cat pulled steadily on the thick ropes that pulled the hurdles. He-Man turned back to Skeletor and drew his sword. Then the marsh rang with the echo of steel clashing upon steel, as Skeletor put all his skill into play and attacked He-Man with a fury bordering almost on madness. But it was no match for He-Man. With the strength of 100 men, He-Man beat the attack, forcing Skeletor to retreat until he stood fiercely fighting on the very edge of the rocky outcrop, with the marsh gurgling and sucking beneath him. "Surrender!" said He-Man. "You can do no more. Call off your partner." Skeletor merely snarled at him, not seeing the danger he was in. As Trapjaw glanced round, triumphant after breaking the second cable, Skeletor lost his balance and plunged down the sheer rock face into the mud, but he never reached it. Using his magic once again, he vanished just as he hit the surface and was gone. He-Man turned to Trapjaw, who had backed away from the cables as soon as he saw his leader was gone, but the damage was done. As He-Man took the criminal by the scruff of the neck and flung him into the marsh, the bridge sagged in the middle, and the 2 remaining cables stretched and gave under the strain. He-Man flung himself to the ground and caught the 2 remaining cables as they ripped themselves from the earth. Muscles bulging, sinews straining, feet braced against the rock, he held them firm, holding the bridge steady until all the Mauritians had crossed to the safety of their new home. "How can we thank you?" asked the Lord of Marais. He-Man smiled and shook his head. "There is no need," he said. "I do not ask for thanks, but I would gladly drink some water with you. I am very thirsty, as if I had been doing something strenuous." He glanced in a puzzled fashion at Man-at-Arms, who returned the look innocently. "Strenuous?" said the older man. "It was nothing that was not well within your capabilities, He-Man."